I've been having a few thoughts about what's next for the church in the 21st century and sort of reflecting back, looking at the last couple of hundred years and looking at the way connection with God has been sort of promoted, if you like, within mainstream denominations or just any sort of church groups basically, and it's obviously been quite some major shifts over the last couple of hundred years. But just sort of reflecting back, there was that time where it was very sort of dark and somber, and people were kind of not that learned of their own selves. There was that time, I guess it's not that long ago, where a lot of people couldn't read, and it was up to the leader, the pastor, the minister, the priest to minister the word of God to the people, to break it down into chunks that were maybe edible meat or bread for the people. And so the story was, go to a place where the priest, the pastor, the minister is, and get fed, and then go back to your life and kind of, come back again and keep getting fed, right? So now that worked, that was working at the time, and that was all there was that was available. And then sort of fast forward into, like the late 20th century, there's been a lot of growth towards, a more intimate, connected relationship with God through Spirit. There's been a lot of talk through the Pentecostal and charismatic movements of the 80s, 90s, I suppose, where people began to become more and more aware en masse. There was always mystical people, I'm sure, that have had these deeper, more intimate connections with Christ through Spirit. But it did seem that there was a really big movement, like there was like the Vine movement, there was, Hillsong popped out of this, there was this whole sort of big shift, there was the Toronto thing going on there back in the 90s, there was like a real awakening of people, we got this whole Bethel situation as an example, right? So people moving in their individual gifts and spirit and getting out, still doing the similar thing, which was to preach the gospel and to make disciples of all nations, which was the call, right? So we know that, we're aware of that, but it's been done in different ways and different shapes. But there's been the teaching gift that's been the predominant gift, and that's kind of really dominated the landscape of Christianity. Like the teaching gift has been kind of exalted as the one that holds the most weight, holds the most power. And again, you can understand why that's become the case. There's the Bible needed to be expounded and brought to life for people. And we needed someone that knew what they were doing. So off went the people to train, mostly men, up until only very recent years. Mostly it was men going off to train in Bible colleges and universities and so forth, to learn how to expand the Word of God. So they learned Hebrew and Greek and got down into some of those deeper meanings of, so what was Jesus talking about? What were those disciples really talking about? What's the context of the, these scriptures from a Jewish perspective in the, the first century or whatever. So again, we can see how this has come about. So the teachers have been exalted to the head position. The pastors, the leaders, the ministers, the priests have been exalted and lifted up by the people in a way to, you're our teacher, you're our minister, you're our advocate, you're our mediator to some degree between us and God. And I think what we've done is we've fallen into a bit of a trap of this, though, that that's become the norm. So rather than learning for ourselves, now that we are so learned, like the average individuals now is reading, writing and comprehension skills are really, really high level compared to 100 years ago, for example. So here we are with such high levels of intelligence and ability, and yet we're still very reliant upon others to tell us what and who we should believe in. So it seems like there's a big shift happening now, though, and this is the observation from myself and obviously many others. I'm just part of a movement of spirit that's, and as an observer, you sort of notice things happening across the world. I talk to a lot of people on Facebook and different groups and so forth. There's tons of stuff going on. People are questioning now and saying, well, this system that we've set up, that's, sort of the one teacher or maybe one or two or three teachers, bigger churches where everything goes through them, and the word of God is ministered to the people still, and the people are pretty much sit down and listen, absorb, go back to your life and come back maybe Wednesday night, come back next Sunday, and we'll see you again next week. And it's become kind of a fractured sort of scenario where often there's a lot of compartmentalising for people, and we haven't even realised this is happening. I think it's crept up on us. And don't get me wrong for a minute, these are not bad people who are doing this. These are just people that have followed what's been done before, as we all do. And change can be difficult and challenging, but let's say you follow that through to its conclusion, right? So you get up a person that's very gifted in the word, and you stick them up the front of a church of 200 to 500 people, and they preach this word, and they seem to know God in a way that the average person in the congregation doesn't know. Okay, so they look to this person as their leader for wisdom and guidance each Sunday, and so on and so forth. And they kind of look to that person, they lift them up in some ways, and they begin to exalt them, and they begin, unfortunately, this is why pastors burn out so much. People expect so much of them. Hey dude, if you can preach the word so well on Sunday, can you help me on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday? I need you. You are my lifeline to God. I need what you've got. And so people won't be satisfied even with someone else in the congregation ministering to them. They want the pastor or the minister or the priest to do the work of ministering to them directly. Now this is a big problem, obviously, massive problem. You've got a leadership group, even if it was just the whole leadership group, maybe you got 20, 30, even if you had 50 in your leadership group, and if you had 50, you must have 500, 1,000 or even 2,000 people. The odds are stacked way against you that you could possibly minister and pastor these particular group of people. So this system is not working effectively, obviously. This sort of top-heavy kind of scenario where there's a lot's expected from the front and not much is expected from those that sit in the seats. And it's sort of a frustration to church leaders. They say, only sort of 10% or 15% of the congregation does anything. And yet that conversation goes round and round. And I've been in these meetings, I've been there at these board meetings, these elders meetings or whatever, and people are saying, why, how come so few people are involved, so people get into cell groups, etc. Well, it seems to be that the people who are the 85% of this number are often don't feel adequate to the task because they've looked up to the front and thought, well, that's ministry. What happens up here on a Sunday on the stage, that's what ministry looks like. Okay, I'm part of the worship team, I pray, I speak, I do the offering, whatever. That seems to be, and whether we certainly haven't intended for that to be the case, I'm sure of it, but that's the message that's been received for most people in congregations. And a lot of people wouldn't even admit that, but on a subconscious level, that's how they are operating. They file in, they file out, they have a compartmentalised kind of life in a lot of ways where their Christian life is very much based on what happens on a Sunday, right? That's where the action is. And yet, the action, goes for 1, 2, 3, 5 hours even at the max, absolute outside, and yet that's just such a small part of our lives. For some reason, we've focused in on something that is good, to worship, to pray, to break bread together, to hear the word of God. These are all good things, but they're not sufficient in themselves to lead us into deeper relationship with God. So what we have is a whole bunch of people that have kept in kind of like this immaturity situation where they don't yet know who they are, and in so doing, they are kind of stuck to some degree in a kind of role where they need someone else to help them live their lives. And without that person there, their leader, they feel, I guess, exposed or weak. And there's the shepherd and the sheep staff, and we have this under shepherd and he's our leader and all this sort of business. But for people to grow, they have to be able to grow strong on their own, and they have to be able to forge their own deep relationship in the crucible of suffering. Unfortunately, it seems the ones that have suffered the most, if you reflect now right across the world, you'll find have the deepest relationship with God. Those that are persecuted Christians, for example, have very, very deep relationship with Christ on their own. Okay, they're separated from other people, they don't have oftentimes a building to go to, and they've had to forge from the fire for themselves this faith that is rich and deep and full, right? So, and we look at those people and think, oh man, they're amazing, how could they live that? The underground church in China has been exalted as that. you know, these guys are incredible, and they are, right? We haven't experienced anything like that here in, certainly in Australia, America. You know, persecution is not, it's pretty much non-existent, really. We bring our own stuff upon ourselves, but that's another side of the point. How do we grow as people? How do we grow? We grow when we have to go into God on our own to find answers for our life, to find meaning, to find hope. When we feel hopeless and depressed or anxious, we need to go in there to find a peace that transcends understanding, that's deeper than just listening to a message or singing some worship songs and becoming emotionally attached to that. These are good things, but they're not enough in themselves to sustain us through the week, if you like, and 52 weeks, year after year after year, right? So if we just keep doing the same thing over and over again, the result is, and if you look around, it's very, very evident that the church is in a great state of immaturity, because it's set itself up in that way that how do you grow if you sit down each week, listen to a 25-minute sermon, which you'll forget, according to stats, by the time you walk out the door mostly, but maybe all of it will be gone by Monday morning, right? If that's your only teaching that you get, if that's all you've had, and you haven't been able to ask questions, you haven't been able to interact with the data. People have realised this everywhere else, universities, school, everyone's questioning is the key to actually getting stuff to stick in your mind, but further, to take it down into your heart, you have to meditate upon it. So not only do you have to question it, but you've got to chew on it and soak it and just grasp it on a very deep level that reaches far below the surface of ordinary thinking. So just to listen to something and to hear it is not enough in itself to keep you focused on it. You need much deeper, interaction with it, with whatever truth, whatever word, whatever that is. You need to interact with it on a very deep level, and in so doing, you actually then begin to sink it deeper into your heart. So to just listen to something, no matter how good the speaker is and how encouraging and how, stimulating that is, like to sit down passively and just to listen, will never do it. Never. The absorption rate is something like 5% or 10% or something of just listening. We've known that. It's been proven right across any learning facility that the only way to learn and to grow and to hold truths or new ideas deeply in your heart, you have to chew on it, question it, debate it, talk about it. And if you look back at the Jewish people, right, the people of Israel, the big thing that they do is that they question and argue. That's their thing. They always have. They've been known for it, right? They'll argue and they'll debate at length, not in a nasty way, but just to chew over so that they can grasp. How does this actually work? Come on, tell me. Don't just speak words at me. Let me question them and pull them apart, rip them to pieces, if you like, until I can understand it on a very deep level, on every level of my soul and spirit. No wonder we're not growing. Okay, we've bought this file in, file out situation where people just walk in, hey, how you going? And you're half asleep, it's Sunday morning, you're absolutely buggered. You've been working all week, you get in there, and I was saying to some lady yesterday, like a lot of guys, and this is the honest truth, right? A lot of guys will walk in there and they'll go, they'll sit down and they'll almost be asleep, and by halfway through it, they're thinking, gee, get me out of here, will you? What have I got to do this over? Oh, good, the footy's on, the cricket. I got a bit of stuff, I've got to get organised for work tomorrow, yada yada, and their mind is far from that. I've been one of those blokes on many, many occasions. I'm already thinking, what's for lunch? What have I got to do? I've got to drop the kids here, pick them up, la la la, whatever's happening. Oh, that's right, work's on tomorrow, I've got to bring that person. So much in your mind. Like, to try and condense spiritual growth to a couple of hours on a Sunday is a losing battle and just is non-effective and will not work. It's not working, we've seen it. The people that grow the most are the ones that go in constantly and are chewing and debating and stretching themselves. Like, I converse with friends 2 or 3 times every week, the same people, but other people as well. I'm talking to people on Facebook. I'm interacting around spiritual matters pretty much every day. It helps me grow. It keeps me on track. It keeps me thinking. It keeps my mind alive and my body and spirit come along with it, in a sense. We're coming together. We're working together for these truths to sink in, and so that you grow beyond. Okay, you don't need somebody to teach you. It says very clearly in the scriptures, the Spirit will teach you all things and bring things to remembrance. It's good to have teachers. I'm not saying you don't have them, but Question what I'm saying. Challenge it. Think about it for yourself. Is this true? Is this what I've been seeing? Is this guy a nutcase? Think about it for yourself and come to a very real conclusion based on your own observations. Research it, look at it, ask the hard questions. And if it doesn't add up, throw it out. If some of it does, which most people say now who are seekers after truth, you'll find kernels of truth in everything. Take those, chew on them, throw the bones out, keep the meat, throw the bones away, and grow, because this is the way forward. So what's next? What is the next thing? It's got to look a lot more like people interacting and becoming alive, not sitting down passively. The passive thing has got to go. It's not working, and it hasn't been working for a very long time. Get rid of the passivity, open up for questions, break through the fear barrier that says, hey, you can't ask that here, you can't say that, you can't do that. Yes, you can. And if you can't do it there, go somewhere else where you can do it, and where questioning is open and welcome, and not to question to undermine, not to question to take power, but to question so that you can grow and absorb deeply into your system spiritual truth. Get to know God personally outside of the building, because that's where real life is. If you only know God from the building, you've yet to experience him in all his fullness, that's for sure. I know I haven't experienced him in all his fullness, and I've been seeking after him intimately for a long, long time. I got such a long way to go, it's ridiculous. But if you've just got it from the building and the sermon and the church that you're in, that's not going to be enough. And I guarantee you're hungering for something more, right? There's a hunger in us and a desire for more, and you will not find it just keeping on going through the same roundabout of Sunday services. If you're hungry, go and find food for yourself, go and fossick. Sure, come back to the Sunday service, bring the food with you and share it with others who are there, but don't wait to be fed by somebody else from the front, because that is a codependent relationship. We don't need codependence. Codependence is unhealthy. There's a time and a place for it when you're young, but you grow up out of it and begin to live dependent upon God himself, not codependent on others to meet your needs and to keep you afloat and keep you going. That's not reality. It's not spiritual depth. So thanks for listening. If you feel like this is something of value, please share it with somebody else, this video. Please subscribe and like the videos that I put out there, because I'd love for people to interact more with these truths and to begin to grow out of where they've been so far into a place where they are, finding a richer, deeper relationship with God on their own. So they can walk and talk and listen and be taught by the Spirit himself to walk and enjoy that relationship on a deep level, not sort of a structural relationship, or one that's based on the system to keep going, but one that's based on you and God together. Hope you really enjoy that, because I know that's the place for me that brings me the most life. That's where abundant life is, in intimacy and connection with God. So head on in there, take the risk, jump in. The water's fine. Enjoy.